Welcome, one and all, to this latest edition of the Future So Right podcast. I'm your host, Pete Beal, and this is a Green Flame Press production. So here we are. We're back for another edition of the podcast. As always, I like to open up by thanking everyone who tuned into our last episode. If you haven't seen it yet, what are you waiting for? You might as well go back and listen to that one before you listen to this one, right? Or you could listen to this one first. It really doesn't matter. You're not meant to listen to these in any particular order. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to listen to any of them if you don't want to, but I am grateful for anyone who does. Likewise, if you like the content, do make sure to hit the thumbs up button down below and hit subscribe. You'll get the latest notification for any new editions that come out. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different from our previous formats. In the past, what we've done is I've sort of selected a primary topic for the standalone podcasts, and that's sort of been our focus. I'm going to try something a little bit different today, though. It's going to be more of a medley, if you will. It's going to be sort of a variety show. I didn't have one topic that I was passionate to feel, this is what I have to talk about today. So instead, let's sort of dive into a wide variety of things. I actually got a few messages on the website, which everybody can do if you have a message for the podcast. I'll have it linked down below. It's my website, petebeal.com. It's a little form you have to fill out. You can ask a question, you can suggest a topic, leave a comment, anything you want. Any sort of piece of feedback is welcome. If you don't want your name read on the podcast, that's fine. I have a little box you can check. And that's all there is to that. So please reach out to me if you have anything you want to say. I look forward to it, and I look forward to reading the couple of comments that we have for today's show. Sit back, relax, enjoy the discussion. Thank you. So I hope you're all doing well. It's been an interesting few weeks for me. If you pay attention to my blog, you might know a little bit about this. I discussed it last week. If not, I guess I can give you sort of the Cliff Notes version. I haven't been getting a lot of writing done lately. And I'm not very happy about that, but it's really due to circumstances that are a little bit out of my control. My day job has really been pressing me for extra work, and then more extra work, and then more extra work on top of that. And that's been eating up a whole lot of my time that I would normally use for my writing. In addition to that, I'm sort of working on finalizing the interior of my upcoming release. I actually provided an update about that release as well in the last blog. That'll be happening in probably September, maybe October. Getting the interior of that set, getting the final formatting finalized. That's been a bit of a pain in the neck. I could always hire somebody to do that for me, but it just seems, I hate to do that when it's something that I know I'm capable of doing myself. Obviously, there are formatters out there that do outstanding work, that do better stuff than I could. But at the same time, I have so much pride in this book and what I've accomplished with it, and I really want to be personally responsible for as much of this as I can be. Plus, I also don't want to write a check for something that I'm capable of doing myself. What they never tell you is that as an indie author especially, publishing a book can get to be a very expensive affair. Maybe that'll be a subject for a future discussion on this podcast. If you're interested in hearing about total costs of publishing a book, let me know. Maybe leave a comment down below or something like that. It's the kind of thing that I don't think most of us like to think about all that much, but it's certainly part of the process, isn't it? Probably part of the process that none of us really enjoy thinking about, let alone talking about. But it's out there, and it's a reality of the industry, and it's a reality of what we do, so maybe there should be a discussion about it. In addition to the extra work, I've also had some bad luck lately in terms of my physical well-being. Nothing overly dire, but initially last week I was having some really bad sinus issues. And the worst part about sinus issues, at least for me, is the impact they have when you're trying to sleep at night. So I can't sleep at night when my sinuses are so inflamed and so aggravated. And then obviously that compounding effects of not being able to sleep and the effects that has on my writing. You know, if you can't sleep and you're putting in extra hours in your day job, there's not going to be a lot of creative energy left after all of that. I was actually able to get a little bit of help with the sinuses though. Went in for some acupuncture, which is something I've done for a few years now when I have certain issues. It's fantastic. If you've never tried it, I highly recommend it. Um, if nothing else, this is what I'll say. If it doesn't help you with whatever issue you have, and for the record, it has helped me with everything that I've used it to treat, but some people say it doesn't help them. But even if it doesn't, I find acupuncture to be an incredibly relaxing experience. If you think about it, you go into a room, they put a few needles in you. It does not hurt, for the record. That's like the biggest fear people have is, oh, they're going to stick needles in me. It's going to be like getting a bunch of shots. It's not like that at all. You know, my acupuncturist actually told me, I believe, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but you could fit like 40 acupuncture needles, the tips of the needles, inside the tip of one needle that they would use, say, to do a shot or a blood draw. So, putting that in perspective, it's really not a painful experience, as you can imagine. And then they turn the lights off, they close the curtains, and you just lay there, and it's a chance to sort of recollect your thoughts, and a truly great experience. And it did do quite a bit to help my sinus issues as well. So then last night, I had a really bad bit of luck. I decided to try out this new milk, Fairlife milk. And I've got to tell you, it tastes pretty good. It turns out, though, that in some way I'm allergic to it, and I had a rather unpleasant reaction. My throat swelled up, blood pressure was all over the place, my pulse was all over the place. That was a mess. So, they made a good product, but not for me. I'll have to find something else to mix my protein shake with. So, as you can see, in terms of actual writing progress, I've had a lot of obstacles lately, but I'm doing my best to fight through them. This too shall pass, and we'll get back to work. I'm really looking forward to my upcoming release, though. I'll probably go a little bit more in depth in an episode a little bit closer to release about this. I might talk a little bit about it today, though. I was actually looking at some first cover design. My artist sent me basically the first sort of draft of the cover art that he's done, and I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to seeing the finished product. It's something a little bit different from a lot of the things that are currently out there. You see a lot of trends in these areas. And to be honest, I see a lot of beautiful covers out there, but the style really isn't for me. Stylistically, this thing is just exactly what I was looking for. And I think it's unique to a point where it'll stand out. And I think the scene that's being portrayed on the cover is hopefully going to be something that intrigues potential readers and maybe convince them to take a chance on the book. So looking forward to unveiling that, hopefully in the near future. Now I thought I would talk just a little bit more about what exactly went into my decision to release my upcoming novel in September or October. If you've been around for a while, you might know my original plan was to publish in May. As a matter of fact, May 18th was my original publish date, although I never actually made that public. And what went into this decision was a bit of a long thought process. You only have one opportunity to release your first book, right? And you have one opportunity to make, therefore, a first impression. So the plan that I had originally been adhering to was I was going to release this book in May of this year, and then I was going to release the sequel probably in May of next year, and then the third book of this trilogy would release probably in May, sometime in spring at least, of the following year after that. And the more I sat down and thought about this, the more I thought this maybe wasn't the best strategy. As I said, you only have one chance to make a good first impression, but you have to remember that the publishing industry is so in motion all the time. It's so fluid. And even if you do come out and you produce a great first book that you think people are really going to love, you need to stay a little bit current, right? You need to keep yourself in people's minds. And that's sort of the main factor, at least, that went into this decision. I would prefer to release these first 3 books, instead of doing 1 year in between them, to do about 6 months in between them, maybe 6 to 8. But I'd like to have them out in relatively short order so that people remember me, basically. You have to keep yourself in the public eye, right? You don't want to be that person that releases a good first book and then a year later you release a good second book, but nobody who read the first one even remembers it. Hopefully you'll be memorable enough to where that doesn't happen. But I think as an early stage author, it's a good idea to put a few pieces of work out there in relatively quick order. Get yourself a little bit of a library out there to work with. I think eventually I'll go, probably after this first 3 book set, I'll go to more of a once a year type release schedule. But I just think it's the best way for me to get things going. So, what is my plan? As I said, September or October, I don't have the firm date locked down yet. I'm going to release the first book. The first book is pretty much all done. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in the podcast, I'm putting some finishing touches on the formatting, and the cover art should be done within the next week, maybe 2. After that, we're pretty much ready to go on that, and that will be good to release on schedule. So let's say I release that in October. My plan would be about 6 months later, say around April or May, to release the next book. Now, the next book is scheduled to go to my editor in July of this year, so I don't think I'll have any trouble hitting that release goal of getting it released next spring. And then next fall to early next winter, I would release the 3rd book in the set. That would be the finale of the trilogy, and it would come about 6 months after the release of book 2. So, again, think probably around the October area. That one I need to schedule editing for. I'm hoping to get that done probably very late this year or early next year. I've also got to have some conversations with my cover artist about the art for the next 2 books. There's certainly time there, but I just kind of like to get an early start on it. So there are my edited plans for releasing this original trilogy. And what I like about this is, even though I've delayed the release of the first book by about 6 months, the entire set will actually be done and out for release about 6 months earlier than it would have under my previous plan. So, overall, I think it's an adjustment in strategy that I hope pays off, and it's one that I feel more comfortable with than my prior strategy. And I think this is important to keep in mind, is we don't need to be married to these things that we've decided, right? We can always be fluid. And that's why I held off initially on releasing the release date for the book, is I wanted to leave myself room to do something like this. So if I had a word of advice to come out of this experience, it'd be simple. Don't make anything public until you're 100% sure that you're making the right moves and that everything's going to go exactly as you want it to. So let's, without further ado, we received a couple of pieces of correspondence to the website. So let's dive into those next. So the first question here, and I can't help but chuckle at this a little bit, comes from, it allegedly comes from somebody named Daniel Danielson. I just gotta say, if that's your real name, I'm a little jealous. That's all I'm gonna say. But he does ask a perfectly legitimate question, which is, hello, do you have any words of wisdom for authors when it comes to maintaining their social media platforms? I find it is the part of being an author that I hate the most. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel Danielson, for your question. It's a good one, and it's something I've actually thought about doing an episode on. And the reason I haven't done that is, to be quite blunt, that's also my least favorite part of being an author. So I don't know if I'm a total outlet of wisdom on this one, but I will do my best. So when it comes to using social media as an author, I just want to make a few things clear right out of the gate. I am the furthest thing from a social media expert. I can guarantee if you were to go out and look for advice on the subject from so-called social media experts, it's probably going to be quite different from what I'm about to say. The first piece of advice that I would offer anyone, not only an author, but if you're doing any sort of creative pursuit, but I think this especially applies to authors, is to be authentic. And what I mean by that is be your honest self. So I have really 3 social media platforms that I use as part of my author platform. I have this YouTube channel where I host this podcast and a few other occasional videos. I have a Facebook page where there's not a very large following there. I've found the writing community there to not be quite so robust as it is in other places. And then I also have an Instagram, which is by far my social media platform with the largest following. Now, I've done some research on this subject myself because I'm not a big social media user in my personal life. In fact, I very rarely use social media. I don't actually have any personal accounts. I have a Facebook account that I very rarely use, but that's all. And I've never really been someone who's been passionate about using these things personally. That being said, as a professional, they're sort of a necessary evil, aren't they? We have to get our names out, and social media is one of the most effective mediums for doing so. So here's my policy when it comes to social media. 1, I have limited the number of accounts that I commit myself to operating. I have these 3 accounts, and I don't foresee myself bringing in more in the foreseeable future. I'd considered joining Twitter at one point. To be honest, though, the reason I elected not to join Twitter is quite bluntly, when I look at Twitter, both from a writing community standpoint and just a general standpoint, Twitter seems like a pretty toxic place. And I really didn't want to be associated with that, so I've avoided that thus far. Instagram, on the other hand, has one of the more robust writing communities out there, which is why I think that's sort of become my primary social media platform. It was funny, I had never used Instagram in the past, personally. And so when I first started, I had no clue what I was doing out there. But I sort of managed to find a little system that works for me, and I think you can as well. Now, people are going to tell you that the most important part of operating on Instagram is your hashtags. You have to find the right hashtags for each post to get maximum exposure. And there's some truth to this. You do need to pay attention to what you're doing there. But I would disagree that it's the most important part of your presence on Instagram. As I said earlier, I think the most important part of your presence on Instagram or anywhere else on the internet where you're putting yourself out there is to be authentic and real. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's keep using Instagram as an example because that's what I'm most familiar with. Now, let's have a fun experiment. While I'm talking, I'm going to pull up Instagram. A little bit of a real-world demonstration I'm not showing you my screen or anything, but I'm just trying to give you a legitimate idea of what I'm talking about. So I pulled up my Instagram. I'm scrolling through my feed, and this will be your feed is the posts by people who you are following. Now, the most of the people that I follow are writing related. They're other authors. They're authors I'm fans of. There are a few other people on there that I follow, but most of them are writing related. Now, what I love about the writing community on Instagram is that as I scroll through this, these photos look real to me. Now, I can't necessarily say that about other communities. So, for example, if I were to search, let's do hashtag, one that comes to mind that I've seen pop up a lot, hashtag fitness. Okay, so my results are going to come up, and holy smokes, that's a lot of airbrushing. Now, I don't say that to be rude, but let's be honest. People can tell if the content that you're putting up is real. Now, when I type in hashtag fitness, I am seeing a lot of Photoshop, a lot of airbrushing, a whole lot of posing in ridiculous positions to make yourself appear to be something that you're not. And I'm not saying this is everyone that's doing this, but it's a disproportionate amount as opposed to, say, if I were to type in hashtag writing community. Let's see what comes up with this. And this is much different. We have some memes about writing. We have a few selfies out here. A few people have selfies with their books. A few people have pictures of their books. Some inspirational quotes out here. For some reason, a lot of people, and I'm part of this too, in the writing community also post pictures of their cats. So there's that. And, I see a few photos out here that are obviously severely edited. And the point I'm trying to make here is that they're not in the majority. And so when I see these, they stick out like a sore thumb to me. And it feels fake. And if I'm scrolling through my feed and I see something like that, I'm probably not going to click on that little heart. Because, okay, these pictures might look good, but they're not a real representation of who you are. They're not a real representation of what you're doing. And I think you owe that both to yourself and to anyone who follows you to be authentic, to be real. And I think that that comes across. I think that most of the people listening to this are probably going to relate at least to an extent. We've all seen something on social media that's made us roll our eyes, right? We've all seen photos, like for some reason somebody posted a photo of this sunset that is so blatantly, obviously photoshopped that it's just unreal. And we've all sort of rolled our eyes and shaken our heads at that, right? So while I'm scrolling here looking for examples, I came across an absolutely hysterical list on a site called boredpanda.com. It's titled 30 Times People Uncovered How Fake Some Pics on Instagram Are. And I've got to be honest, I'm having a pretty good laugh here. Oh, but this is the point I'm trying to make, right? You don't want to be. Oh my God. I got to stop scrolling while I'm talking here. You don't want to be this person out on a website like this that somebody's laughing at. You want people to feel when they look at your content that they're getting a small glimpse into who you are and what you're all about. And posting an atrociously photoshopped photo of yourself in some fancy restaurant is probably not the way to do that. Oh my goodness, that's bad. All right, it's boredpanda.com, and I highly recommend everyone looks this up because it is hilarious. I'm not going to lie. This is just amazing. Maybe I'll link it down below for you. Now, as far as any other tips I might have, uh, in addition to being your authentic self, the main point I would make, the main advice I would give, rather, would be to act in a way on social media that you wish everyone else would act, both on social media and in real life. Uh, if somebody is kind enough to follow you, maybe give your post a like, maybe give you a comment, that person deserves your respect. They deserve your kindness. You see a lot of people out here, a lot of so called influencers that get into sort of internet feuds with their followers or with other so called influencers out there. And is that really the image you want to create for yourself? I mean, maybe it is. I don't necessarily think for an author that's a smart tactic. Eventually, the attention that type of interaction is going to get you is going to fade. And then you're just going to be remembered as that one jerk. So it's the same rules that apply in real life. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And be aware of what your fellow authors are doing. Pay attention to what they're doing. Do you see people making a certain type of post that seems to get a good response? Now, I'm not saying copy their post. Obviously, you shouldn't do that. But think about, why is that post doing so well? What is it about that post that people seem to be responding to? What is it that makes you like certain content? Play to that, you know? I've got to be honest, some of my most successful Instagram posts that I've ever made, I never would have suspected that those would be the most popular ones. Um, let's go back to that and take a look. So, taking a look at my top posts in terms of reach for the past year, what do we have? We have a meme that I just sort of posted because I thought it was funny and it sort of tied in to the topic of one of my podcasts. That got huge outreach. We have a writing tip that another author had posted on Twitter. I posted a screenshot of that, and along with my thoughts on the advice they were giving. That's the post that's had the widest reach in the past year, actually. One of them is a photo of my dog after she broke her leg. Everybody is very kind, wishing her well. Another was a piece of writing advice that I myself put up about adverbs. I took part in the author mugshot challenge. That post did very well. And I also had a funny post where, if you're on Instagram long enough, you'll find that you get these messages from these bots or these people in other countries who uh, essentially come on to you in a romantic way, and really they're just trying to get money. And so I sort of played around with one and made a post of it, and people thought that was quite entertaining. But as you can see, there's no one set thing in any of these that I can say, oh, I can just post this over and over and over again and I'm going to get amazing results, right? You need to have a little bit of variety. I could post, for example, these pictures of myself every day of the week. Now, ironically, Instagram, these photos of myself do not seem to be as popular. I'm trying not to be insulted by the fact that photos of my dog or my cats are so much more popular than photos of myself. Maybe I should read something into that, huh? But truthfully, you need to understand you're never going to figure out the exact right thing to post at the exact right time every single time. You're going to have things that aren't going to perform as well, and that's fine. Learn from it. Just pay attention to trends and be authentic. It's so important to be yourself. Don't go out there and post some inspirational quote just for the sake of posting some inspirational quote while everyone else is doing it, but you've never done it before and it seems to run contrary to your prior posts. That's going to stick out as fake. People notice these things. People observe these types of things. Don't be that person. And my last bit of advice would simply be engage with the fellow authors in your community. If somebody has a post that you like, give it a heart. Give it a comment. Say something nice about it. Interact with them. Get to know them a little bit. If somebody posts a piece of writing advice that you find helpful, tell them that. Comment that. Say, oh, this is a great idea. Thank you for sharing this. Build yourself a bit of a reputation, okay? And if people do this for you, interact with them. Respond to them. If somebody thanks you for a piece of advice you share, interact with them. These are really the most important things. Just act. I think this all comes down to one simple sentence. Act like a real person. Okay? Don't act like this robotic, flowery version of yourself that you've created for social media. Act like a real human being, and you'll receive real human interaction in return. Wow, the time flies. This episode's really starting to run a little bit longer than I had originally intended, but I do want to get to this last question that was sent in to the website. The question, the user checked the anonymous box, so I won't give their name, but it's a very simple question. They just asked what I have been reading or plan to read lately. My next read, I'm actually really looking forward to. I've never read the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I picked up the first book last week, and I'm going to be doing some traveling very soon, and it's perfect for what I need. I can fit it in a backpack very easily. Very small 4x6 book. Not too thick, not too heavy. I think it's going to be the perfect travel book. And also, inevitably, since I'm traveling, I'm almost certain to come home with more books. It's almost inevitable with me. I end up going to local bookstores, and once you go in there, you have to get something, right? You have to support local businesses. That's what they're always telling us. I am being a patriotic American by buying more books than I need. Okay? I am doing my civic duty to my country. So that's my answer to that one. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson is going to be my next read. Lately, I have read a few different things. I recently read The Stand by Stephen King for the first time. Somehow I had never read that before. It's very good. I had also read a collection of short fiction by Terry Brooks, which recently came out, titled Small Magic. I was really impressed with that as well. What else have I read lately? I've been doing a lot of reading of my own work, actually. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, book 2 is going to the editor in July, so I've been doing a little bit of a reread of that as well, trying to identify the last few areas that I want to tweak. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Let's see. I'm even looking at the shelf just to make sure that I didn't miss a shout out. No, I think I pretty much hit what I've done recently. So, a couple things. I would recommend anything that I just said. They were all good. I'm really looking forward to this Mistborn series, though. And actually, I just thought of this. You know what? I only have the first book. So, if I finish this book while I'm traveling, I have a built in excuse to go to a bookstore and buy at least one more, right? You're all with me on that, right? I'm going to take your silence as a yes. So, thank you so much for your questions submitted to the website, both to our good friend Daniel Danielson and to the second questioner who had the anonymous box checked. Thank you both very much. And a reminder, as I said earlier in the podcast, if you have anything you would like to submit, anything you'd like me to discuss, or if you would just want to call me names, that works too. You can go out to my website, petebeal.com. It's going to be linked down below. There's a form you can fill out. As I did today, I don't have to read your name. If you're self-conscious, you don't want your name read on the podcast, I understand. Just check the anonymous box, and I would be happy to read it on the next episode. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and start to bring this episode to a close. I'm going to try to get one up in 2 weeks. As I said, I have some traveling coming up, but I'm thinking I might record an episode in advance before that and get it scheduled to come up on the normal release date. If not, you can check my social media platforms where I'll keep you all updated on that. It's all linked down below, my Instagram, my Facebook. And like I said earlier, if you subscribe, you ring the bell, you'll automatically get notifications whenever I upload a new podcast or a video of any kind. I do hope you enjoyed the show. Once again, this has been the Future So Right podcast. I am your host, Pete Beal. And please, until we talk again, stay safe, stay healthy, stay creative, and always keep writing. Thank you.